Hey guys, and welcome back to Morgs Menu. So today we're going to be doing another restaurant copy recipe, or multiple recipes as we normally do. And this time it's going to be for Olive Garden. So Olive Garden isn't really somewhere that we go to a lot, but I think most people can agree that when you really want unlimited salad and breadsticks, that's definitely a good option to go to. So figured I had to at least try and replicate those two items along with one of my favorite entrees from there. So I found these recipes on Pinterest, so I will link them down below in case you want to try them yourself and follow them. So I'll be testing them out today to see how close they are to the original thing and if they're good in general. So we're going to be doing obviously salad with their homemade salad dressing, their homemade breadsticks, and their baked ziti. I can't think of the actual name right off the top of my head, so I'll put it on the screen when I'm editing. But it's basically kind of like a 5-cheese ziti. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so step one is to start making the dough for the homemade breadsticks. Obviously, when you're making homemade dough, that can be a long process just because you have to allow the dough plenty of time to rise so that it gets nice and fluffy and a good texture by the end. So we're going to start with the breadsticks because it does take almost like 2.5 hours basically from start to finish. So for the breadsticks, we're going to need 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons of warm water, 1¼ teaspoon of instant yeast, 2 tablespoons of regular white sugar, 1½ teaspoons of salt, 3 tablespoons of regular olive oil, about 3 cups of flour, and then for the end, once they are done baking, you're going to top them with butter and garlic salt. So first step is actually just to get the yeast activated. So just for reference, this recipe is going to make 12 breadsticks. That's a little much for Mitch and I. So we'll definitely have leftovers, but whenever I do baking, I'm always scared to do like portions of a recipe just because I know that certain ratios aren't exactly the same for baking. So we're just gonna have a bunch of leftover breadsticks. I don't think Mitch is going to complain about that. Basically, first thing you have to do is just put the yeast inside of the water. I'm just gonna measure out 1.25 tablespoons of the yeast and the water. And then we're also gonna need 2 tablespoons of sugar. And a good sign is immediately started bubbling as soon as I put the sugar in. So that's a good sign. So basically you're going to let that sit for 5 to 10 minutes until it's foamy. So it's already starting to boil, so probably will only need 5 minutes. And then I'll check in and kind of bring you guys closer so you can actually see what's going on. But this is what it's looking like so far. All right, so as you can see here, the yeast has started to like foam up, so it's ready to go. So we're gonna head and start mixing the dough together. So just in like a kind of medium to large bowl, we're gonna go ahead and add in 2 cups of flour. I'm just using this whole wheat flour. 1½ teaspoons of just regular old salt, 3 tablespoons of olive oil, and finally our yeast mixture. So now that it's mostly combined together, we're then going to add the remaining flour 1/4 cup at a time. So we're going to be basically adding 1/4, stirring, adding 1/4, stirring. Alright, so as you can see, I kind of switched to my hands. I noticed that the outside of the dough was kind of getting dry and like the texture it needed, while the inside is still super sticky. So it does say that you need to knead the dough after you add in the flour. So I'm kind of just like partially kneading it now just to try and get the flour more combined more consistently throughout the dough. So overall, the dough is feeling pretty good at this point, so I'm going to take it out so I can knead it a little better on the surface. So I'm just gonna throw a little bit of this remaining flour that I have down on the surface so it doesn't stick or anything like that, and just kind of start kneading it and incorporating this last bits of flour. Also, as you guys know, I do not really know what I'm doing so much at this point in my cooking life as far as to be considered good at baking. So if I'm doing something really wrong right now, feel free to let me know. I do want to get better at it, but I feel like baking is something that you kind of just have to like learn, and it's just not something that I've done a lot. So any tips that you see and you're like cringing right now while I'm doing it and I'm making these breadsticks gonna taste terrible, let me know. Alright, so I think overall it feels like the right texture of dough. Again, we'll have to see how this turns out in the end, but I used basically 3 cups of flour, and it feels, you know, doughy, but not too sticky to the touch, which is what the recipe says. So now it says to go ahead and add it to a lightly greased bowl. So I just took a little olive oil and spread it around with a paper towel. I don't know how well you can see. I'm just gonna put it in this bowl, and then you wanna cover it with a towel, like so, and then set it somewhere in a kind of warm place so that it can rise for an hour. Alright, so it's officially been an hour. So our dough, as you can tell, has about doubled in size, as it says. So it says to now kind of punch it down so you get all the excess air out of it. And then we're going to pull it out of this bowl and get it onto the counter. And basically now you want to divide the dough into 12 equal parts, because this is going to make 12 breadsticks. And once you've got your little pieces cut out, we're just going to take a baking sheet and spray it down with some nonstick spray. You could also use parchment if you have it. And then you're just going to take each piece and roll it out. It says into like a 9-inch thing, so I'm just rolling it in my hands. And that's pretty close, I think, to 9 inches. So then you're just going to put them all, kind of repeat that for all of them, and then just lay them on this baking sheet. So here they are, all rolled out, relatively close in size at least. So now you just want to cover this pan itself again and let this rise for another hour. So just again, set it in a warm place and let it rise. Alright, so while that dough is rising, I'm going to go ahead and throw together the salad dressing so that can kind of sit in the fridge and you know, all the flavors can combine. So after learning from the Copycat Chick-fil-A video, I noticed that the dressing itself calls for 4 to 6 servings, which obviously just for Mitch and I, we don't need. So I'm going to be doing just over half of the actual recipe. So I'll just read you the full recipe of everything and then just know when I'm actually pulling it together. I'm not going to be using those exact measurements. So you need a 1 ounce pack of Italian dressing mix. So I just found this package in the salad dressing section of my grocery store, and it kind of works perfectly because this is actually 0.7 ounces instead of a full ounce. So I'll be able to use this full package. You need 3/4 cups of olive oil, 1/8 cup of white vinegar, 1/4 cup of water, a teaspoon of regular sugar, 1/2 teaspoon each of salt and pepper, 3 tablespoons of mayo, and then 1/2 teaspoon of minced garlic. And here's the final product. I'm honestly really impressed. This looks pretty good. It was kind of looking weird when the mayonnaise wasn't fully combining with the rest of the stuff, but I would definitely recommend using a whisk towards the end to get everything combined, and it kind of looks like exactly like their salad dressings. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this in the fridge, and I'll check back in a little while. All right, so the dough is rising for the breadsticks, and the dressing is currently in the fridge, so it's now time to go ahead and start on the pasta dish. So I've gone ahead and made the executive decision to veer away from the recipes just a little bit. So the breadsticks are supposed to cook at 425, and the pasta dish is supposed to cook at 375. So I want them to all come out at the same time, so if the breadsticks are warm and the pasta is warm. So I'm just going to meet in the middle and preheat my oven to 400 degrees and hope that everything comes out okay. So we'll update you if this is a mistake later on, but I think it'll be okay because it's about 25 degrees from each recipe, so I'll just cook the breadsticks a little bit longer and the pasta a little bit shorter time frame. I went ahead and preheated my oven to 400 degrees, and then now I'm going to go ahead and start boiling the pasta. You guys know how to do that, so no need for me to waste your time showing you. The recipe that I'll be linking, again, is a huge recipe, so I'm going to be doing half of that recipe, so we don't have leftovers of unhealthy pasta dish for days. So it calls for a pound of ziti pasta. I couldn't find ziti when I went to Trader Joe's this weekend, so I just got this rigatoni because it looked basically the same. And this bag is a pound, so I'm just going to cook up half of this, and then I'll show you how to pull everything together. Alright, so now we're going to work on the topping that goes on top of the pasta dish. So for this, again, I'm doing half of the recipe that it says, so I'll tell you exactly what I'm measuring out, but just double it if you're doing the full recipe. So we need 1 cup of mozzarella cheese, and I'm going to be using this cheese replacement from Trader Joe's. We're going to need a 1/4 cup of panko breadcrumbs, and then the recipe calls for half the recipe is basically an 1/8 cup each of Romano cheese and Parmesan cheese, but I have this combo here, so I'm basically just going to do a 1/4 cup of this. And then lastly, it calls for a clove of garlic. And now we're going to go ahead and assemble the bottom portion of the pasta dish. So we have our pasta that was boiled for 1 minute less than whatever the package instruction says. So we need this, 2 cups of marinara sauce, 1 cup of Alfredo sauce, a 1/4 cup of ricotta cheese, and then we're going to be doing another 1/4 cup of this Parmesan. So now we're going to add the pasta mixture into this pan. And then top it with our cheese breadcrumb mixture. So now we've got it fully covered on top. So as I mentioned, I altered the recipe a little bit. So the original recipe for double this amount at 375 is 30 to 35 minutes. So I'm gonna plan that this is gonna take 25-ish minutes just because it is less food as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw it in the oven. All right, so it's now time to throw the breadsticks in the oven. You can see they've risen up some more and gotten bigger, so we're gonna go ahead and cook them up with the pasta dish. All right, and while everything is finalizing cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and pull together the salads. Obviously a traditional Olive Garden salad, they put it in a big bowl and toss it in the dressing and put everything on top, but that's not really practical for 2 people, so just gonna put everything in this bowl here, and then we can top it with whatever amount of dressing that we want. So also a traditional Olive Garden salad, I guess, has romaine and iceberg lettuce, but again, not practical to buy 2 bags of salad for 2 people. So I've talked about this before. This butter lettuce, it's kind of, to me, feels like an in-between of romaine and iceberg, so I figured it'd be a good one to use. And we're gonna, on top of the salad, just add some tomato, olives, croutons, Parmesan cheese, and then of course some little pepperoncini peppers. Now, I know it looks like I cut the tomatoes kind of weird, which I did. I think traditionally for Olive Garden, they cut their tomatoes in like bigger chunks. So I wanted to kind of just cut it more like that. And also, I'm not a big fan of tomatoes, so I'm gonna try it, but I may not end up eating tomatoes, so I wanted them to be easy for me to pick off. Alright, so here's the final salads minus the dressing. Now also Olive Garden traditionally does red onion, but I don't like uncooked onion, so I didn't put it on here, but you can add that if you want a slightly more authentic. Alright, and here is how the pasta turned out. So it's just starting to brown on top with the cheese. Even the almond kind of fake cheese melts really nicely, so looks really good. Alrighty, so the breadsticks are done and out in the oven. They were just starting to brown on top, so I figured that meant they were pretty done. So now all you have to do is top them with a little melted butter and garlic salt. And here's everything in its final product state. To be honest, all of these recipes were really delicious. As I mentioned, I'll link all of them down below, but definitely check them out. Specifically the salad dressing and the pasta dish. Both were really, really easy, but also really delicious and just like different flavors to have. If you have any questions on any of the recipes or any things that I did, as always, leave those in comments down below. If you're new here and haven't yet subscribed, make sure you go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the videos I post on Wednesdays and Sundays. Thanks again for watching Morgs Menu and hope you have a great day. Bye guys.